Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Scott Lobenthal. I know I haven't met everyone that's new in our organization, but this is a series that we started about 2 years ago, and we're calling it Virtual Chalk Talks. The goal of this is just to provide additional value to our families and to help educate both our players and families in general. It's also an opportunity for our coaches to ask questions as well. We typically like to invite guests, whether they're, alumni of Hang Tough or former college, current college ball players, including professional softball players, as well as any influential people or successful business women in our community that have an athletic background. That way they can just share their experiences with our players, and we can kind of talk about their softball journey and how they've ended up kind of where they're at right now in life, and the girls can ask questions, because I know that the experience that everyone has is different. It varies person to person, including your recruiting experience. I don't think we've had one guest on that had the same experience, going through recruiting. And then on top of that, just the things that have touched them and influenced them throughout their careers, and, kind of why they chose the path that they're on now, either as a professional or outside of softball. So, this is all something, great for the girls. Hopefully everyone can get a lot out of it, and, feel free to ask questions at the end of the session. And again, please if you haven't already, mute your mics, and that way there won't be any distractions during our conversation. So I will be asking questions, kind of following an agenda that we typically follow during these talks. And our guest tonight for our first Chalk Talks this year is Maggie. And how do you pronounce the last name, Maggie? Is it Balint?
Balint.
Great. And I'm going to go ahead, Maggie, and we can start, just with maybe just a brief introduction, and you can kind of, introduce yourself to the group.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I am currently a professional softball player, so I'm still playing. I started my career, I'm originally born and raised on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and then I went to school to Oregon for 3.5 years. I transferred out with the coaching staff, and then I found myself at San Diego State for the last 2, and then a COVID year I had, and finished up here at San Diego State. And then I just recently drafted this last season of my senior year and played all summer in Chicago and San Diego professionally. And now I'm in the off season, and I do lessons, clinics, stuff like this, giving back to the community during my off season as I still progressively train. I'm also in my master's program right now for education counseling that I'm planning to use in the future. So there's a little bit about me. I'm a pitcher. I do not hit, and I've just been a PO all of my career.
Okay. Well, Maggie, we're going to start by, asking you, like, at the beginning, when you started playing, and, who was your biggest influence on you when you started playing sports?
Well, my story, and I just want to put out there, like, everything that I went through, again, like you said, is very different. It's person to person, where you are in your life, and, family development, and all different things play a role in choosing the journey that you go on. So don't think this is the way that's supposed to go. It's how you are and how your family's structured and what you truly want out of this journey that you're going through with softball. But my journey starting off is I actually had no interest in softball. I was playing other sports and doing other things. I was actually really big in soccer and basketball when I was younger. And then I would play softball. That was like my third sport. I really didn't care to play it. I was a third baseman. I was a hitter at the time. Okay. And my mom was actually a Division I athlete. She was also a pitcher. And everyone's like, oh, when are you going to start pitching? Because your mom pitched. And my mom's like, I'm not talking to her about pitching. I'm not touching her in any way to become a pitcher, because I want her to come to me and have the desire to do it, not just because I'm her mom and that's what I did. So I did not start pitching until I was 12. which is like kind of late bloomers because usually everyone kind of starts when they're super young. And I started when I was 12, and it actually occurred after I got kicked off my all-star team because politics and a whole long story with that. But I actually got uninvited off the all-star team that I played with the whole summer. And I was devastated, hysterically crying, went through this really bad situation with the coaches just being mean to me and the girls picking on me, that I looked at my mom and I said, I'm ready to be a pitcher. I am ready to be the best of whatever that is, and I'm ready to commit. And she looked at me square in my face and she said, if you're going to be a pitcher, we're pitching 5 days a week, 100 pitches, no matter what the weather is. And of course, I'm from the Northeast, so it snows, rains, hails, hurricanes, anything that's possible is up there. And I was like, all right. And from the day I said yes to now, that long-term commitment has been fully followed. And I really started developing when I was 13 into a pitcher. And I was starting with 43 feet, 12-inch ball. So I didn't even progress into any of it. And I was throwing 60 off the gate. I was just a hard thrower. They called me flamethrower back in the day because I could throw hard, but I had absolutely no control of the ball. They would call me wildly effective, even though I was not effective at all. I was just wild. And my mom's philosophy during this whole journey was just throw hard. The accuracy is always going to come. The speed might not. So I would just throw as hard as I can in games. I would walk the bases loaded, and then I would strike out the next 3 in like 9 pitches. Like, I was just so inconsistent with pitching. But as I grew as a pitcher, I got better and better. Within a year from the time I started pitching to that year point, I was in middle school. So I was in 7th, 8th grade. And my middle school coach told me that I wasn't going to pitch that much because I threw too hard. And my mom said, what do you mean she's not going to pitch that much just because you threw us hard? She's like, well, it wouldn't be fair. So we played the whole year. I pitched every game of every inning, no matter what that woman said. And then 8th grade came around, and my mom's like, she needs to be challenged. She needs to go up to the high school team. They were like, nope, we can't do it. So my mom's like, that's it. You're not playing middle school ball. What you're going to do is you're going to train home 5 days a week with me. And I'm going to find you guest playing teams that are older and like the 14U range that I can jump on and practice until high school gets out, so I can join an older team. So I looked into travel ball a year after I started throwing, which is kind of crazy to think because I had no experience in pitching at all, just to jump into travel ball. And I played on this like local team. Like, this tells you how like low it was. It was like $500 for the whole year. And it was like, so they were called the Orange Crush. That's where I started. And it was in Delaware. And as I developed, I played this team called Chaos. And they are one of the top teams in the country, even now, from the Northeast. And I played against their 18U goal team. I was only 13, I think, at the time. And they looked at me, they're like, we want you on the staff. And I'm like, I'm playing. The girls that I was pitching with were 18, and I was like not even in high school yet. And I'm like, this is so crazy. And my mom's like, I don't know how the age difference is going to go. I don't know how the adjustment's going to go. And that's scary, putting like a middle schooler with all these old high schoolers that are about to go to college, like very different mentalities. But that year was probably my most crucial year to play because I developed so much. And I'm not going to lie, I sat the bench a lot that year. I did not pitch as much as I thought I was going to, but that year really groomed me for the last 4 years of my college career because I learned from really talented players that all went Division I and had good careers in college. So it was a great experience through the travel ball world. You know, there's always those speed bumps. So speaking of travel, I went into, so my sophomore year, this is when recruiting rules were different. I committed to the University of Delaware my sophomore year of high school. I agreed to a 5-year contract, full scholarship. And then about a year later, I walked into my parents' bedroom and I looked at them square in the face and I said, I can't go to Delaware. And my mom looked at me and she just said, okay. Did not argue with me, did not ask me why, nothing. Went to my dad. I said, hey, I want to let you know I'm going to verbally decommit. And he's like, what? Blew a fit, was really, really mad. Did not talk to me for a couple days. And then they're like, well, why do you want to transfer? I mean, why do you want to unverbal? He's like, you don't have another scholarship available. Like, this is all you have. So I was like, I can't go to a losing program. I was like, that was one of the things, like, I wanted to go to a program to make it better, but I could not go to a program that was losing 40, 50 games a year and only winning 10. So I decommitted. And when I decommitted, My mom's like, well, if you're going to verbal in person, you're going to decommit in person. You're not going to do it over the phone or over text. You're going to get your good girl panties on and go in there and tell the coach why you're decommitting. So I sat down there with the pitching coach and the head coach, and I had this little sticky note of the reasons why I was leaving. And of course, no coach wants to hear that the pitcher that they just recruited to develop their whole team is leaving. And it did not end well. She was very upset, but that was another huge learning curve, was facing somebody that knew was going to be upset about your decisions, but sticking through it and factually backing up why you didn't want to do what you're about to do. So I decommitted, and then now I'm a junior. And at this point now scholarship money is all taken away because everyone recruits so early. And I sent, my mom was like, all right, well, now we have to start the recruiting process all over, and it's going to be 10 times harder because now there's no money. Positions are already filled. What are we going to do? So my mom made me list 25 universities at any division, anywhere in the country, anywhere that I had interest in. And I went and figured I had a couple D2s. I had a community college on one of them, and then maybe some mid-majors, and then some big schools. And when I decided what the schools were, I gave it to her. She's like, all right, now we're going to create a envelope, and we're going to put all your stats and everything that made you successful and makes you highlight and put it out. So I had and at this time I had like player of the year, Gatorade player of the year for 2 times. I had all these accolades that I could send out. So instead of sending an email that would just gone on their computer, it was sent in the mail and delivered to their desk. So they had to open it up. So it's like, who doesn't want to open a package that's just sitting on their desk, right? So going from there, a whole bunch of schools started calling my travel ball coach and was like, is this kid a problem? Is her grades not good? Like, if she's this good, why is she not committed? So my coach had explained the whole scenario about decommitting and what I was looking for in a school. And then all the coaches were like, all right, well, we'll see her out at Boulder, Colorado for the 4th of July tournament. So I was like, all right, well, that's where I'm going to get to see all these big time schools. So we went out there for the 18U big sparklet tournament. And I performed very, very well. And my parents both came out with me. And to sum it all up, at the end of the trip, within 5 to 6 days, I had over 50 full ride scholarships offered to me. And then now I'm going into my senior year after my junior summer. And now I have to decide, when you're a senior at this time, if you got to pick 5 universities that they got to pay for you to come in, you and a parent to come in for free and spend the night, and you get official visits like that. Instead of just one school, you get 5 to choose from. So I chose Missouri, Texas A&M, Cal Berkeley, Oregon. There's another one. I can't remember what the other one was. Oh, Minnesota. So very drastically all different conferences, but they were big schools and they were far from Pennsylvania. And one thing that I did that I would recommend anyone that's looking to play in college athletics is list 3 to 5 things on a list that you absolutely need in a school. Like I remember like just thinking back to like 9 years ago when I created this list, I said I wanted to go as far away as I can go from home. And I wanted to go to the highest division. And my third was I wanted a male coach. Those were the 3. So mine was location, it was the highest level, and it was what kind of person did I work for. And I specifically knew I gelled well with men compared to women just because of the experiences that I had. So going into this recruiting, into this trips of all 5 of them, now there's women coaches, there's different divisions, there are different locations. And I told myself, I need to stick to this list because this is the list that narrowed me down to these 5. So this list needs to narrow into the 3 categories that I really wanted. I ended up choosing Oregon. And I made sure that Oregon was my last visit because I knew I was going to commit verbally and I wanted to do it in person. So that is how I got to Oregon. I don't know if you have another question for me. I'm kind of giving you guys a lot right now. I'm all over. But yeah, so that's how I got to Oregon. That was my trip there, and decommitting and committing and kind of figuring my way out.
Yeah. So what was your, you kind of just jumped over the high school experience. How was your high school team compared to travel, and what was your experience playing in high school? Was it a really good team, or how did they do?
It was a decent team. Like we were 4A,
Okay.
and before I joined the team, they didn't go to postseason. They were under 500. Let's just say that they were not. They were like bottom of the pack in their league. And then my senior year, we were in the state championship. So we developed, and we also had 3 different coaches come in that year. Like throughout the years, there's 4 years, there's 3 different head coaches. But prior to that, the guy was there for 15 years, and then he got kicked out after his year with me, just because he wasn't doing what the program needed, and it was kind of plateauing, and clearly he had 15 years of stats that were not adding up. So, but my high school career was awesome. I hit during my high school. You couldn't just be a PO in high school. But it's actually, now that I think about, like, high school was so long ago, it's hard for me to go back to those days. But actually, a fun fact, I was just telling my boyfriend this the other day. I hold the record for 43 feet for the amount of strikeouts in the state of Pennsylvania, which is kind of like a cool stat at a little over 1,300 strikeouts in 4 years.
Awesome.
So cool little stat. That's like, I think it's like around 15 to 16 strikeouts a game. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially pitching from your freshman year through your senior year. That's
Totally.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Is that where the University of Delaware saw you? Was it high school?
I never, it's funny. None of my colleges came to my high school. It was all through travel. And I don't know if just because the Northeast, it's a little bit different. I mean, I think in other places, that's more of a bigger thing. But my experience, I did not have people show up to my high school. Also, the rules were different, like, recruiting times and stuff like that. So I think that also played a part in it. But yeah, so my high school career was awesome. I was 3-time All Gatorade, 2-time Player of the Year in Pennsylvania. I had a very good career there. I have no complaints. I also was like an All-American at basketball my freshman year, and then I quit. But my mom really preached on playing as many sports as you can until you couldn't. Just because mentally you just need to get a break sometimes from that sport. I think nowadays we're so honed in on being a perfectionist at what one thing we do, and dipping your hand in different sports actually work different muscles and reaction time and seeing different friends and moving your body differently. That's actually going to benefit you in each of your sports very differently. So I think I totally agree with you. And I think people don't do that anymore because they just want to be really good at what they want to do. But I think it's also really good mentally that you don't get drained out, or like it's kind of repetition, the same thing over and over again. So I would really advise, even it doesn't just even like a violin or being art, like anything, not just honed in on one sport, because as you get through your career, it doesn't matter if you end in high school or travel ball or college or even pros, is that at one day it's going to end and your career is going to come to an end. We can't play this game forever. And you're going to have other hobbies and other things you love to do. And if you don't know what you like to do, your transition out of your sport with your identity is going to be really challenging to find when you get out. And I don't think athletes think about their identity and who they are without the sport. Like when you introduce yourself, oh, I'm a softball player. Okay, that's just what you do. But like, who are you? Like, what other values do you have? What else do you like to do outside of playing softball? Because, and I mean, everyone can agree on this. You spend every weekend and every night at the fields or whatever you're doing. It's hard just to identify yourself as a softball player. But then when you get out, you don't know what else you like. So that's why I advise people to go out and try different things and join different clubs. Or I know in college or even high school that there's different clubs you can join. Just go try them out. Like, even if this doesn't sound like something you like to do, just go do it and try it. Because when your career ends, you're going to have to find something else to fulfill that competitive edge you have, or just that time and passion that you have for something, to find in something else.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I know we try to preach as a club for all of our girls to be multi-sport athletes. We really do push them that anything that they can be involved with at school, that's a good thing. Get involved in as many activities that you can get involved with. And I have heard, from a number of players and even from coaches, the burnout, chronic injuries from that standpoint. And then also the players when they're transitioning, like you're saying, out of the sport Now, some of them have gravitated to physical fitness or a business for that challenge and that competitive edge, but they had that difficulty, making that initial switch. So I think that's a really good advice. So your travel ball experience, did you hop around to a lot of different teams, or did you play with a national team, or what was your experience playing travel ball?
So I was a late bloomer, as kind of starting out at 12 as a late bloomer, especially if they're recruiting you at 14. So I mean, I had 2 years developed to come into a college, and I think when I orange crushed my little rec team that cost $500 to play for the year, which is like nothing compared to what people pay now. They probably pay that in uniform fees. I played with them for only about a season. And then I got picked up by PA Chaos, and I was with them for 5 years after that. I never left. I stayed one place. I know there's some people that like to hop around because of playing time, but that organization was one of the best in the area. My mom really connected. I don't know if you guys know them out there, but Joe Spina was my head coach. My mom was very connected with him, and this was a learning experience for me. And he made it very clear from the get-go, you're not going to come in here, you're not going to start when you're 14 years old on an 18U team. And my mom says, perfect, that's what we want. Puts me on the team. We spent more time on the bench and at practice than we actually did playing, but it was totally worth it. And then the next year, the torch was passed to me, and then I was the number one through the 4 years I was there. Again, still learning and developing as a pitcher and understanding the meaning behind a staff and all that stuff. But no, I stayed with the same organization all 5 years. After the 1 year, I switched over. So yeah, it was, I had a great experience in travel ball. I have no complaints about travel ball other than all you do is travel.
Yeah. No,
especially in the Northeast. I mean, you have to go warm all the time.
So yeah, a lot of what you're saying resonates with a lot of the other guests that we've had on in the past, that they typically have stayed with one organization. I know that there are a lot of families that hop around here and there. And they're always constantly looking for something different. But, being a good teammate, learning that your role on the team changes each year, understanding that, when you came in, that you were learning and absorbing that information from the people in front of you, and then being able to come in the next year and using that experience and contributing at a different level. I think that's really important for all the girls to understand and to learn, whether it's high school, travel, whatever it is in life. Typically, in the business world, I'm an architect during the day, and we'll get new students that come into the office. And when they immediately start, they want to jump right to a head lead designer position. They don't want to go through the process and start at the bottom and work their way up. And it's like, you need to understand that there's a foundation that you need to build up first before you get to that level. And it's only going to help you in the long run. Big picture is something that we kind of preach a lot too, telling families that there's a process involved, that, fixing the mechanics, either hitting, their fundamentals with throwing, things like that. It takes time, and it also takes time for a team to gel and have that chemistry. And the longer you can keep a team together, obviously it really does help that team perform. I've had years where I've had a 10U or a 12U team that, couldn't find a win. And then by the time they get to 18U, that group is a solid group of ball players. So just because they've stuck together and learned one another and have developed together over time. Is a lot of your team, was your team basically the same group most of the time?
Yeah, there was definitely the core, like 6 or 7 us that, and like also if it wasn't that, like, so we were on the gold, so we were the top team, we were pulling underneath. So I mean, the people were in the organization to begin with, so it was kind of like the standard across. I think also when we look at people that switch teams constantly all the time, I think it could be we want more playing time, or we're not happy with the coach or the girls, and that kind of faults us to, did we do our homework? Did we research this team? Like, did we know what we know now before we went into it and we still committed? Because if the answer is yes, then we can't be upset with what the outcome was. And I think it's like when you buy a house, you want to know what neighborhood you're in. You want to know what school, you want to know where the grocery store is. You want to know the environment, what the tax dollars are. Same thing when you're doing a team. You need to know all the information behind it. And if you, and this goes back to even, what's the age group that we kind of have on here today?
We have anywhere from 9U all the way to 18U.
Okay. One of my theories that a lot of people, I think, get taken away by this is it's like, well, when they ask you when you commit to a school and the coaches preach, oh, you commit there for an education, you're committing to the university. And honestly, I do not believe in that at all. And the reason I say that is because if we're committing to the university and we're not getting our playing time, then why are we leaving? If we're committing to the university, then the portal should not even exist. If we're so happy where we truly commit, and that's what every travel ball coach preaches, then why are we not staying at the university for all 4 years? My theory, and from day one, I've experienced this, is I'm committing to the coaching staff. I'm committing to my boss. Because at the end of the day, if I don't like you and I don't work well with you, then it's never going to work between us. I'm never going to develop as the teammate that I need to be. I'm never going to win you games. I'm just going to be a headache in you. And I'm just going to be a problem, and vice versa. I'm not going to be able to be comfortable around you. So it's more of a business transaction, because if you look at it as a business, which it is, I'm paying you to come here to play softball. This is what I expect you to do for me. This is your scholarship. And then he or she gets rewarded because you win, and they go to postseason and they make money off of the team winning. Ideally, it's a business transaction. No one wants to look at it that way. If you look at it as, oh, it's business, no one's feelings get hurt. I'm getting my money regardless if you're happy or not, but I also enjoy working with you. So it's a two-way street. So I think when you go into recruiting, when you look at colleges, when you look at travel ball coaches, it's an interview process. Yes, they want you, but do you want them? It's two ways. It's not like it's just solely one way purpose. It's a one-way street. No, it's both ways, because you might want me, but I don't want you. And I'm not going to be desperate, because there's many options out there. As you guys know, you can find different avenues, whatever you're looking for. And that also comes with knowing exactly what you want, creating a list. This is what I want, and I'm not willing to budge for these 3 or 4 things. This is what I need to be, to feel comfortable, to have security, to be able to perform at a high level, whatever those 3 things are to you. And it could go religion, it could be I'm close to home, it could be, and maybe there is a school that you're strictly going there for the education purpose of whatever program that is. That, yeah, totally. But I just don't want athletes to think, oh, I'm going to commit to this university because it has to be for educational purposes. If it was the educational purpose, then why are we playing softball? Then just go there to be a student. So I think the way is that, as much as it's a business for these coaches, because they're cutthroat. There's a lot of coaches that are out there that can be really nice about it, or they could be like, oh, we're not interested, sorry, we went a different route. And then you end up being hurt. But if you look at it as a business, okay, I just wasn't the best candidate for that job. That was just not going to be a good fit for me. Let me go find somewhere else that I can be a good fit, that I can become better as a person, as a player, and that program can grow. That is what you're looking for, a two-way street here. We're not looking for a one-way. And I think if we do it that way, then there's gonna be less feelings hurt in the process. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, what about the education? What about the education? I'm all about education, totally. But there's many schools that offer hundreds of programs that you can find your education. How many kids go to school and they don't know what to study? But they commit to a school. I'm gonna go to, let's just say UCLA. I'm gonna go to UCLA and play softball, but I don't know what I'm studying. I'm going in undecided. Then why'd you commit to UCLA? Oh, because you committed to the softball program. That's what you committed to, right? Now, if you go and say, oh, I'm going to be a psych major and I'm going to Fordham. Okay, you can make that argument. I'm going specifically for that program, and softball is tying into that. But it all depends how much of a level of softball plays a part into your decision-making. Is it off of that program, specifically education, or is it off of school? Because you can double dip. You can go find a psych place and find a good softball place. Or you can not find that softball place, but find a really good psych school. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm like talking in circles and that sounds weird, but I know that approach usually scares some people when I say, look at it as a business side, because then you don't get hurt.
I don't think it's scary. I think it makes sense, because it's the same thing even when you're looking for a job. You might go in for an interview, but it's just as much an interview for yourself as it is for them. Kind of like what you're saying, do your homework. Ask the questions to make sure that it's the right fit for you. It shouldn't be just one thing, like just softball or just the education side. It's a whole package, and how it works for you. So what kind of helped you with I know you said you made that list, which is something that we talked to our girls about putting together as they're looking at colleges. identify all the colleges, identify the majors you're interested in, identify the things that are important to you. And then you kind of said that you had those 3 prime items that you kept going back to. Did you go and visit those schools, like, and do clinics with them, or not clinics, but say camps with their programs? How did you kind of meet those coaches, or was it just they came to that one big tournament? Was that the key thing?
I was super late. I mean, I was senior year, and I had like 3 weeks before signing day before I had to commit. So I went for 2 weeks straight. I was at 5 different universities going to visit schools, and it was super hectic, but I knew those 3 things were in the back of my mind. And those coaches still to this day do not know that those were the requirements that I needed to meet. And I just remember I was like, I'm going to try it out to see if, like, I don't want to not go to school because it's only 5,000 miles away or 1,000 miles away from me compared to 3,000 miles. I didn't want to knock out of school just because it wasn't as far as I wanted it, or because it was a male coach. I mean, I wanted to be able to give an opportunity and see if I could gel in that situation. I mean, there was a male coach on almost every staff that I worked on, but was that the one that was going to be working with me? And could I work with that female that was going to be on that staff? So, I mean, I looked at it when I went on my recruiting trip. I was a chatterbox. I asked 100 questions. I went in there interviewing them. Like, I already knew they wanted me. They already offered me. But now it was like, well, okay, you want me. Now, do I want you just as bad as you want me? And I looked at them. I said, where do you see me fitting into this team? Like, why do you choose me out of all the thousands of pitchers out there? Why do you want me? What stood out about me that it didn't stand out with anyone else? And I would put them on the spot. Those are hard questions to ask. It's like when you're dating somebody and you're asking why they like you. Right. You know, right. It's like these questions that's like, oh, shoot, you're really asking me this right now. Oh, and I wanted to know everything that I needed to know to make my decision, because I was committing to a program that was at a high level and competed for a national championship, but I was also looking for someone I could gel with in a personal connection, because I knew myself going into this recruiting that I needed someone that if I liked and loved working with them, then it was going to be okay with me. Like, I had to love that person that I was going to be with. And I had to know that that person had my back, and I trusted them with everything: school, softball, family, everything. I needed to be able to trust them for me to commit to them. And that could be a hard thing to find when going through the recruiting process. Is like, how is it just not, oh, I just need a kid. I just need a left fielder. But like, why? Like, why do you want me? And like, hearing why, that's like, if you ask that question to a coach and they give you an answer that you like kind of were like, oh, wow, then that means they truly meant it. If it was like, oh, well, we saw that your speed was good and that's what we needed, that's just a general answer. I'm looking for something personal, like something that's going to stand out to me and say, oh, wow, that's how they view me. That's how much time they took to observe how I play, or how I treat my parents, or what I do on social media. Like, they really took time to try to get to know me before I was a ball player, or even as a ball player. So I think going in, as much as they're trying to get to know you, you need to get to know them. Doing your homework is the most important part, because you don't want to commit to a school. Like, if I stayed with Delaware, I would have been miserable. I would have been checked out and had probably a terrible college experience my first year. And I didn't want that to happen. You only have so many years of eligibility.
Yep.
And my biggest thing was I wanted to have the best college experience, and what university was going to give me that.
So you said something interesting, and I'm not trying to open a can of worms, but I think it's important too that a lot of kids don't think about it, but you a lot of times you commit to a coach, not just to a school, because you want to be coached by that person. And I know that at the University of Oregon, you were there, and then that thing happens at colleges sometimes, where a coach leaves the program, and then you made the decision to go to San Diego State University because it was just the right thing for you to do. So can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, when Mike White and the whole coaching staff ended up leaving and moving out, there was about 11 of us that transferred out within a 3-month period, I believe. I was one of the last ones to stay. And I was trying to make it work with Missy Lombardi that was there at the time. I was trying to give her a chance and trying to stay there, because I didn't want to leave. I don't want to keep on moving and hopping around. And I mean, it wasn't like I was going to go to Oregon State. I was going somewhere far. So I was going to have to up and leave my life and all my friends. So like that was a hard, and also my education, when you transfer out of a school, they make it very hard for you
Am I
to graduate.
going or not?
So it's educational wise, it's hard to stay on time when you transfer out. So your degree gets all messed up when you leave. But when Mike White left, I was really put in a spot. I'm like, man, this is really going back after 3.5 years. I thought I never would have to do this again. I said, my 3 core values made me have the greatest experience in college that I've ever had at both universities. I said, and I have to stick with those things that kept me here. And when he left, I committed to Mike White, and I said that to his face. And I'll say that to anyone. I've committed to him and him only at that program. And he is no longer at that program. So there's no longer for my need to be here. And, at that point, I was going through, I just got done a really bad back injury that I was almost out for a year. And I was coming back from health, and I lost a whole bunch of weight, and mentally I was dealing with stuff in school. And I was like, you know what? I'm checked out. I'm done. I can't. Softball like was something that I wanted to do for a living and was my life calling. I said, but you know what? I don't ever want to pick up a softball again. Like I was just burnt out. And like when Mike and all them left and all the drama that came with, I was like, you know what? I'm just done. I'm emotionally exhausted of fighting. And I was like,
it was a good change.
Yes, I needed something that was totally opposite. And that is exactly what I seeked. Again, I created another list at 22 years old. I created another list compared to my 16-year-old list. And it was very drastically different because I was at a different phase in my life and a different calling. And I said, I wanted to go to a school that was mid-major, that I could turn the program around, and I had the flexibility in my schedule to get a job by still playing. So those 3 things were very different than going as far as I can away at the highest level and playing for a male coach. Those 3 completely shifted. Now I'm looking for a mid-major. I'm looking for a flexibility in my schedule, and I'm looking to change a program that's not developed yet. And that is where I found myself at San Diego State. And I got exactly all 3 of those. And I turned the program around. We were in postseason for the first time after I think like 9 years. We won the Mountain West. I had a phenomenal career the last couple of years. I've had a job for the last 3 years in San Diego State, doing different things. I worked for a finance company, then I worked for an insurance company. I worked for a dog food corporation. And then I started my own business at the end of my senior year. And I got all that I wanted out of that. And that, again, I have no regrets going to San Diego State because of those checklist things. And I think that's the thing that makes me comfortable the most of this decision that I made, is that I created something that I truly believed in, and I picked it off of those values and I stuck through it. And those 3 values are the reason that I wanted to go there and to continue to stay there. And now I live in San Diego full time. And this is my new home for at least another 2 years until I relocate. So, my lists were very important in my recruiting process. And I don't think I really noticed that until as my recruiting process kind of got in deeper depth of when there was harder decisions to be made. It made me just rely on that in the back of my head. Like, what do I want? Let's not forget what our list was before we had all these options. Because sometimes when we have these options and then we create the list, it's like, well, are we creating that list off of the options we have? Or are we really creating that list, or are we creating that list off really values that we want without those options even being in our head? So I would always say, try to create a list of that, that's coming up in the future of things that are happening. So you can be like, well, these were my options. I mean, these were my core values that I really wanted in this, whatever situation it is, before I had these options. Because then it dictates how your options go. Then you get to maneuver through your pathway. And if those are truly things you want, then you're going to be okay wherever you end up going. Because you won't regret it. Because those were the things that you wanted before you even knew what was out there.
Yeah, that's great. So how did the opportunity to go to Athletes Unlimited come about?
So going into my last year, it was right before Christmas. So almost a year ago from this time, I was working with someone in the analytic world about statistics about softball. And she also worked with MLB players. And it was this whole committee that I got in contact with that helped me have the year that I had with numbers and strikeouts and stuff like that. And I remember I went to her training facility and I was getting worked on, and she was like, my masseuse was like, oh, how are we feeling? I was like, hey, I just need 2 more months and I'm done. I said, I need my body to hold up for 2 more months. And she comes in the room without even hearing me say that. she's like, oh, well, she's got 4 more years of playing. And I looked at her sideways. I said, what? She's like, you're going pro. And I said, what do you mean I'm going? Like, I didn't even think that was an option. Like, my head was not in that place. I was so focused on my senior year being the best year that I can make it, that looking at the pros and looking overseas was not even an option. And I was like, you really think I'm good enough to go pro and make money doing that? She's like, absolutely. She's like, your numbers are some of the best in the country. And I was like, kind of like thrown off because no one's ever said that to me. And nor did I even think that was an option, just because going pro is there's only like maybe 90 players in the country that go pro with both conferences. I mean, there's not that many. I mean, there's only like there's 2 organizations that are pro, and then there's probably only within like 5 or 6 teams in the country that are pro. So, I mean, it's slim picking. I mean, there's not many people that can have that chance. But Vic Hayward, she was a chairman for Athletes Unlimited, and she was also the hitting coach at San Diego State. So I kind of had her in my corner, advocating for me in that process. And also my numbers were really good, and they competed with the best in the country. And I mean, that was what my fighting chance was. My numbers had to be good for me to show that I was valued in that way, that I could compete with the best. And also my numbers at Oregon, when I was up there, I had a really good couple years up there. So it also showed that I could compete in the Pac-12 and postseason players. And then I could also compete at a mid-major school and still have those numbers where they need to be. So statistically, my numbers lined up for that to happen. And also I had the right people in my corner advocating for me, and who I was as a person and how I handle diversity and all that kind of stuff also plays a huge role on things like that. So that's kind of how I got into Athletes Unlimited. And then now I'm just waiting for my next contract to come out. So that should be coming in the next couple months, hopefully. Cross my fingers that I get another one. And yeah, so that's what I'm kind of doing right now. And that's how I got to Athletes Unlimited.
That's awesome. And did you enjoy the experience, I take it?
Oh yeah, it's so crazy, like throughout the phases of like little league to high school to travel ball to college and then to pro, like those stages, like they slowly like get different, but the stage between college and pro is just drastically changed. Like there's difference between high school and travel ball and then going to college. Like that transition's different just because of time management and independence and finding yourself and figuring out how to do things by yourself, all that kind of stuff. But in the pros, it's like on another level because you're your own coach. So if you don't know yourself as a player or how to self-correct or be body aware or be able to adjust at a quick time, it's going to be crucial for you in those moments to be able to be aware. If not, you're just going to fall behind. Also, the strike zone is very, very different. That took me quite a bit of games to get used to. No one really goes in there telling you. You just learn that you don't put the ball there after it goes over the fence at like 400 feet. So the strike zone is like, I'm not exaggerating. It is on both sides of the white chalk, like on both opposite sides. Like the river is a strike zone. The goal is not to throw it on the white, and in college it's to throw it on the white. So it's like a different approach from throwing it on the white, they can't hit it, to, oh, you have to make sure that it's 8 inches off the white for them to just foul it off. So it's a different mindset. For sure. It's very different. Also, it's very quick within, you play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you have Monday, Tuesday off, and then you practice Wednesday, Thursday with your team when you get redrafted, because you get drafted every week to a new team in the same organization. So there's 60 players. You get put on a new team every week. So you think about your high school teams or your travel teams, think about how long it takes you guys to gel, right? Like to get in sync of things. And there's no coaches. There's none of that. So the players are their own coaches. The captains kind of rule everything for decision-making and like lineups and stuff. But you have to think, how fast can you adjust to be a good teammate and evolve around the people that you're around to be successful? Because there's money on the line. There's wins on the line. There's your paycheck is on the line. You're competing every pitch to make money. And I think that's the exciting part in this league, is that there's a game within the game. But also when it comes to it, like you have to be very self-aware of who you are. Like how you come off, how are you as a teammate? Like you just can't be a good teammate. Like you have to be a good person. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be easy to vocalize and control your body language. All those things are very crucial when playing with AU.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, I think we're getting low on time here. So I'm gonna open it up for questions. And then I do have a couple questions written down in case the group's quiet, in the event that it happens. But, we've got a lot of players on and coaches. So just make sure that if you guys want to pipe up and ask a question, just unmute your mic and please go ahead. Any questions?
I'll kick off the questions. First off, thanks for joining us, Maggie. I really appreciate it. And I appreciated hearing your story. I think you had a lot of really good points that we've never heard people bring up before. So my question, especially once you got to college, was there anything that really surprised you, or maybe you weren't prepared for, in terms of the difference from like the travel and high school game going into college?
Well, everything's a lot more organized when you get to college most of the time. Like meals are paid for, like all that stuff is, you just kind of show up and you're on a schedule. I think the biggest thing that was different was how coaches responded in a game and in the locker room. Because when you're going to recruit and you're there as an athlete watching, potentially going to go to that university, behind closed doors, it could be very different. And I think asking players when you're on your official visits, like, how does coach handle when we lose? Like, what does he or she do? Or how does it handle, like, how does practice go the next day? Because you have to think, when you're going on a recruit, they're pulling out the red carpet for you. They want you to come there. So they're going to show you all the good, but it's your homework to look at, well, what about the bad? That's something we have to consider, because most likely our bag is going to be pushing us away. Does that answer your question? So really investigating how a coach coaches. I think that was my biggest change, is because, again, it's not, you're not getting in your car with your parents, and your parents are honing you in and telling you what you did wrong or what you did great. It's somebody else. And it's very different, because that person is relying on this. This is their job. And if they don't win, they're going to slowly get out of the program. So I think there's a lot more pressure, especially in these big programs, like in the Pac-12 and SEC. There's more pressure to continue to win. And when that's not happening, it's definitely applying more pressure on the coach, and then it's applying more pressure on the athlete. And I think when you feel that pressure from a coach that you want to satisfy, I think sometimes you take it very personally and you stress yourself out. But I think when you're in those environments, I think that's the time that you lean on your own teammates and say, hey, are you feeling this way? Or am I just feeling this way? Or is it just stress? Is it lack of sleep? Does that answer your question? I know I'm kind of going all over the place.
No, it does. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Any other questions? I do have a couple, so I'll throw out a couple real quick. Looking back on it, this is something that we ask a lot. Looking back on it, at where you're at now in your career, to before graduating from high school, what kind of recommendation would you give yourself? What would you, or advice would you give your younger self?
Oh man, I would say athletically, I preach, the faster you can adjust, the more successful you're going to be. So the easier that you can develop whatever skill that coach is trying to teach you and just soak it up and buy into it, the easier the process is going to be for you and the team and everyone around it that's surrounding the process that's going through. Hold on a second. There's a whole bunch of puppies at this farm I'm at right now, and they're not happy that they're kenneled. But I think one of the biggest things that I kind of forgot when I was in college, my freshman year, we were going into postseason and we're heading to the World Series. And I just got into this mindset. I was like, forget school. Like, I'm here to play softball. And I did not care to submit assignments. I did not care to study. I just was like all about Oklahoma City and winning a national championship and competing. And then when that high from the competitive side of me went down and we were back in Eugene, Oregon, and we lost, and I'm looking at my grades and now I'm potentially going to be uneligible for next season, the stress and anxiety hit me like that. Now, did I not just lose in the World Series, but now I just put myself in a very bad position for future stuff. So I think the best advice I can give myself is that I needed to put homework and schoolwork first and then softball. That was the biggest, and as much as it stunk in that moment, I'm so glad I did that, because then I became a scholar athlete and I had almost a 3.5 almost after my GPA after that. So, I mean, I turned it around. Like, it was, the potential was there. Absolutely. It just was, I was just not in that mindset to be like, oh, it's not important to me, but it is important, because you can't compete if you don't have the grades to compete. So I think that learning process my freshman year definitely paved the rest of the road for me in my college career, to even my master's. I was in my master's program my senior year. I'm finishing up my last class right now, and I was a scholar athlete my whole master's program, which is really exciting. And like, to me, that is one of the biggest accomplishments that I've ever done athletically. And I know academics right in there, is that I've never been a scholar athlete, and to do that in a master's program, and from my very second semester of college, almost failing below a 2.0 to now I'm having a 3.7 is unbelievable. And I was also, I became the first female athlete of the year for San Diego State this last season. And that award topped it off, because it not only talked about my athletic accomplishments, but my academic. And I never received an award for my academics ever. And I think that really showed me how much work and development I changed from my first year of college to my last year's, how I viewed education, and the process that I went through, and making sure that my schoolwork was done before my softball came.
Yeah, that's great advice. We appreciate that. It's obviously you have a life beyond softball, and it's important to have your priorities set straight and to think about it. What would you say would be the number one thing that takes somebody from a good player to a great player, based on your experience seeing good players and great players all the way from high school to pro? What do you think that the element is is it their work ethic? Is it mental toughness? Is it their attitude? What kind of thing kind of makes them stand out?
Man, that's hard, because I've played with like really great players, and there's drastically different things on the scale that make them. And some people have attitude, some people don't work hard, and some people are just naturally gifted. I mean, you see that talent all over the board, especially at the higher level. And I mean, as much as we'd like to say, just work hard, that sometimes is always just not enough. Some people are just naturally gifted, and they might just have something better. But I think what's made me successful, and what I've noticed consistently through the pros in college and travel ball, is the more self-aware you can be, the more successful, because that means you can change in your environments. You can change mentally. You can be who you need to be still as yourself, but you need to be self-aware of how you're coming off, how you're talking to people. Also being body self-aware. When you're playing, like, hey, what do I feel? How can I make an adjustment from pitch to pitch? Mentally, am I doing what I need to do throughout the week? Am I staying hydrated? Am I sleeping enough? Am I aware of my sleep habits? Am I aware about the people I'm spending my time with? I mean, you don't have much time off the field sometimes in college. So like, on a Friday night, am I putting myself in the best scenario for Monday morning? And being aware of that in your own personal time, because there's gonna be days that you don't want to see anyone's face and you just want time to yourself. Are you willing to be self-aware and know that you need that? And that also comes with really knowing who you are and developing those skills and understanding how you function and who you function the best around. And I think college, I mean, you go to college not only for an education, but to find what your interests are and who you are as a person and how you develop in that area. And I think being self-aware is definitely one thing that is probably the hardest skill to understand. But I guess the best thing to start with is, if you're not self-aware, you don't know where to start, just start asking your question, why? Like, why do I do this? Why do I think this way? Why do I hang out with this person? Does this person bring value to me? Does this hobby bring value to me? Does this make me happy? Do I see this long term? So, I mean, asking yourself these why questions, why doing it, so you can explain to yourself why you're doing what you're doing. So you understand yourself. Oh, I know when I get upset, I do this, but why do I do this? Is it something my parents do? Is it insecurity that I have? It's just diving deeper into those thoughts and being able to be self-aware and also be able to adjust to what the environment's holding for you.
So that's a great response. So yes, and we do talk about self-awareness, especially at the age of 13, as they're starting to get into recruiting and people are coming to watch their games, and we talk about how it's not fair, but you need to behave in a way that you're aware of the people around you that are watching you at all times. You got to be aware of what you're putting on social media. Absolutely. So I think that's a great response.
And the last thing to add on there is that I think if you truly know who you are and what you bring to a team and your craft and you're self-aware, that brings you a confidence and swagger instantly. If you know who you are and what you bring to the table, you feel comfortable in any situation. Oh, I know myself. I know I like chocolate over vanilla. I'm not going to argue with someone that likes vanilla, or I'm not, and understanding both sides of it. But I think that brings a confidence. Like, I know what makes me great. I know what makes me successful. So I'm going to stick to that. I'm not going to change what I'm not good at. Like, for example, I'm a hard thrower. I predominantly will get more swings and misses on a rise ball than I will on a fastball. So why am I going to throw more fastballs in a game than a rise ball? That's not my strength. I'm not going to fall down to that level because that's not who I am. It's just like, if I'm more of a drop ball kid, why am I learning a rise ball? That's not my strength. Yes, do you need some of the zones? Of course, but I'm not going to put all my time into it. I'm putting more time into my craft that makes me me than what doesn't make me.
Yeah. So one more call. Anybody else have a question out there? I've got one question left, but I'm leaving it open if anybody else has a question.
Keeping it smooth and rolling tonight.
Yeah. All right. Last question here. What do you think? What is your plan right now for the future, and what do you see, say, beyond softball, or maybe a future business including softball? What's in the future for you?
So ideally I want to play softball at least 2 more years in the pros. I still have so much passion and so much more I want to learn. And even though I'm at the highest level, I don't even feel like I'm at the highest level. And being around the girls at Athletes Unlimited and getting that experience, it just fills your soul of passion and competitiveness that I still have so much left of it. I think for the future, right now I started a company with a couple of my business partners back in Philly. We have a legacy NIL, so promoting women's athletics and getting NLI deals for women, specifically softball right now, but growing in other areas. But that is where I'm putting my focus in, because when I'm done playing, I want to promote athletes to keep on playing. Sadly, we don't make as much money as an MLB player. We don't make millions or even 6 figures in this job. So we have to find other jobs and other sources of income. So I would love to be able to find contracts and deals for women that they can play softball and get this contract and not have to work another job. That is what I'm trying to promote and give back to the girls underneath me and the girls that are still playing, hopefully at that time. So that's kind of where my future lies right now. I love playing, and I don't play for a paycheck. I play for the pure passion and love of the game. I still get sometimes with my mental training that I do, I ask my kids to look at a video of someone that you look up to, or just another softball player in that same position. And I want you to tell me what you saw in that person that you want to add to your game. And I remember this girl was like, "Oh, I watched a video of you." And this was the first time my kids ever told me that. And I said, "Oh, and what did you observe? Like, what did you think of me?" Because I'm curious what a 10-year-old thinks of my performance and how I act out there. And she said, "I really liked how excited you got after a strikeout." And that was the first time someone, and if you watch any video of me, I am screaming at the catcher after the strikeout. And I looked at her, I said, "I'm so glad you brought that up, because that scream is pure joy. That is just excitement of me coming out and portraying what I have held up in me." I said, "That strikeout, I know for 5 days out of the week, I am working and visualizing and seeing that strikeout. And my job is to get a swing and miss. To me, if I get that swing and miss, I did my job. And that's me getting excited and thinking about all the work and everyone that's helped me get where I am and showing the passion that I have. I think sometimes as female athletes, we don't show as much passion because we're kind of controlled in that way. I'm completely opposite. I want to show everything I feel. I want to show you all the excitement that I have. I want to show you how serious I can be, but I can also be super passionate, screaming in your face. So I think looking at that is I still have so much passion when I get that strikeout as much. And even through my college career, even after the 1,300 I had in high school, though I don't even know how many I had in college and even in pros, like I still get is just as excited as it was my first strike I ever threw. And I think having that burning passion inside, it's going to be very hard for me to shut off. So I just don't think I'm ready to check out on that yet. I'm just enjoying it too much. And I feel like after all the years and the journey that I've been through, this is what I worked so hard for. So let me just enjoy it until I'm ready for that next chapter.
Awesome. Well,
awesome.
Thank you, Maggie, for joining us tonight, making time. And, we really do appreciate it. And if any questions do come up later on after this, I'll make sure that I'll forward you that information and let you give me your response. But
awesome.
Really do appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a good one. Good luck with everything. Bye.
Yep. Good night.